Hey, everybody. Welcome to week 176. Yep, 176. And we've got a lot to talk about. And I don't know what happened to Jack. He just disappeared. So hopefully he'll come back on here. But we're going to be talking about free money. Yeah, free. But there are always catches because with the government, it's never easy. And you got to go on a treasure hunt. So we've got a master treasure hunt Sherpa, Dan Flaherty with Mountain West Consulting. So this is going to be great with him. And I know Adam, Jack's back. So you guys could breathe a sigh of relief. But hit us up in the chat if you want to harass us. Go easy on Dan because we'd really like to have him come back again. And if this is as good and as informative as I know it will be, but interactive with you guys, this might have to spill into next week. We'll just see. But in the meantime, and Jack, I think he said he has a dad joke that might even be, if there's a punchline or something, he might even have a Starbucks card. So we'll see. Adam, with all the crazy stuff happening on Capitol Hill, including, oh, hey, you know that ERC money? Yeah, well, portal shut down. We got to get caught up. So you can talk about that, but also it looks like if you listen to the banter, and I try to listen as little as possible anymore because I like to have a good attitude and not a bad attitude. And those jokers give me a bad attitude. But it looks like we may be having a governmental shutdown because of the impasse between the two extremes. So anyway, I'm sure you've got some rants on that, but go ahead and tee us up if you would.
Yeah. So first off, want to thank our special guest Dan for being here, which none of you get to see yet, but pretty soon you will. He's in a lovely bourbon lounge right now doing a tasting that is fabulous. So it's like I want to be there instead of where I'm at. Yeah, I don't have it. On the government shutdown, I could have a tirade about morons and insanity, and hey, we're the ones that elected him. So really, I agree with whoever it was, whoever the Republican representative from New York, who said, well, I mean, God, we're the people that elected him. So you only got one place to look. You keep on electing kooky dukes, this is what you get. Although, sorry, I will get the one fun side thing. My wife did have some choice words to say about Lauren Boebert and the video of her grayed out boobies. So
Yuck, yuck.
In the middle of a family play. I mean, this is what. Anyway,
bad.
That was pretty bad. Now, but what Gary was referencing on the employer retention tax credit, they are trying to catch up, with some stuff, but at the same time, they also have raised a lot more concerns about potential fraud, which in our world has, like people hear fraud and they think, oh my God, I mean, does that mean I shouldn't even apply? Because I think I might qualify, but I'm really worried about it. No, in all cases, we maintain the same position we've always maintained, which is, hey man, if you qualify, you qualify. And even if it's under the exception rules, meaning you didn't have the revenue reduction criteria, but you had some other factor that qualified you, you should go for it. Like there's no reason. In other words, nobody's going to come and give you a medal for doing your civic responsibility for not taking tax dollars that we're all going to have to freaking pay back at some point in the future anyway. So, which is right, kind of moving on to the subject of Dan's presentation. If the money's available, you should take it. You're welcome for the loan that me and Gary and Jack just gave you. But what they are worried about is fraud. And in our world, what fraud really represents is like, I flat out just lied on the calculation. Like I got PPP money and I'm also trying to claim ERC money on the same dollar. Or, I'm claiming, more in payroll than I actually had in, revenue by like a factor of 20. This isn't because I mean, there's not a lot of sanity checking that goes in those applications, so this really, and the IRS doesn't have a ton of people, but it's started to get a little bit of a microscope on it. So for our client base, I wouldn't really worry too much, but it does mean that, some activity, if you've been expecting a refund, is going to be slowed down. But last part of the tirade, what I am excited, going back to today's topic, what I am excited about, because I hear this question, I will hear this question between now and the end of the year as we roll into tax planning, in at least every other meeting that I'm going to be in, which means that I'm probably going to hear it at least 100 times. What else is there? I hear about this free money, grants, hiring people, incentives for blah, 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 blah. What do y'all know about that? The answer is I don't, because I cannot keep up. Sometimes it's custom, sometimes it's custom. It's very, so what I know about are, if you hire longer term unemployed people, I know a lot about the work opportunity tax credit, but that's at the federal level. When it gets out of that, it's like I'm outside of the skis, man. So, we always tell people, find Dan or find people like Dan, or speak to your local economic development corporation, because they're going to be in the best positions to really help you out with what's available. So I'm excited to hear about this and learn something, because it's been a topic where it's like, as Gary will attest to, very rarely do I say I don't know, so I probably have something to learn about my ego and humility. But this is definitely one of those areas where I'm like, I can't even fake it on this topic, because I know so little about it. I'm pretty excited about it.
And I'll throw in my 2 cents there, or 4 cents. So I'm the statistics guy. So here's the statistics dealing with ERTC fraud. As of July 2023, the IRS Criminal Investigation Division has initiated 252 investigations involving more than 2.8 billion of potentially fraudulent ERC claims. Some 15 of the 252 have resulted in federal charges, and 6 of the 15 have resulted in conviction. So there's been a lot of abuses there, and they are mandated to, and they, I think, tried to do this as it was going, and finally said, we got to stop before the money goes, and figure this stuff out. With respect to what else is out there, I get that question all the time as well. And I think that, there's, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but it seems that there are, government funded, there are also government, quasi-government funding that is out there. So, and private funding. What I mean by that is there are organizations that pull money from public and private sources that put money out there for businesses. There are, like, the Foundation for the Carolinas puts money out there, but you got to keep up with it, because it's ever changing. It's not as if they do have some programs that go from year to year to year, but since COVID, it seems like that there are more programs that are kind of ad hoc, that are there. Money is funded, and then they expend those funds, and then that fund disappears and a new one pops up. So I'm kind of in the same position, which is I cannot keep up with it, but I know that stuff is out there. And don't assume that going to the same well and not seeing something there is all that is out there. There are other wells that many of us do not know about. So that's my 4 cents.
All right, I'm going to tee you up here, Dan. So anybody listening, please hit us in the Q&A, and I'll be monitoring that. So I'll be feeding that stuff to Dan as we get it. So we want to tailor this to serve you. That's our purpose, to serve you. And that brings up one other important disqualifier, or not disqualifier, but just a point of emphasis. And that is, disclaimer, I guess. The point is, Dan is not doing this to gain money. He is not, he helps a lot of companies even find these grants out of the goodness of his heart. And he's a capitalist like the rest of us, but he really has this notion of serving privately held businesses and their owners. And he does a really good job. So that's why he's on here. So there's no ulterior motive. This is not a sales pitch. You didn't just sign into a timeshare presentation. There are no things like that. We didn't just lock the door behind you. So Dan, tee us up, man. Walk us through a little bit of your journey, because it was a few years ago when we were throwing axes.
Yeah.
And you had your sales thing and you were struggling with it a little bit until you found this.
Well, I appreciate the time, everyone. It's great to be on, I guess, 176 episode number, right? So nice
That's right.
job for all three of you accomplishing that. Yeah, the journey was interesting. It started with my father. It's somewhat personal to me because my father left corporate America at a late age and started his own company. So he became an entrepreneur, right? With zero training, like most of us have in that respect. And I watched him along his journey starting a company. And in that journey, he uncovered a grant. And I'm quite sure they connected with him. And one of those grants effectively found him manufacturing capabilities in the Middle East, a distributor in the Middle East, and brought him customers, prospects in the Middle East. In addition to that, they gave him some money, right? But it was beyond just, here's a check. It was help to bring his company into export sales. He would have never known how to be successful in the Middle East, right? So I watched the impact that a government organization had on his company, and it surprised me. I never would have thought that would have been the case, ever. So in that initial, part of our journey, we knew that there had to be more out there. We just had no idea what they were, right? So use that in addition to a lot of conversations we were having with small business owners. They were saying the common statement of, we cannot afford to grow. Now think about that. I mean, any business book you read will not say those words. How can you not afford to grow? But most of the authors of those books, as you all well aware, they've never run a company, right? And most of them probably have not in business. It is a true statement that I cannot afford to grow. So what does that mean? I've maxed out my production capability. Great. Go expand your factory. Don't have capital. How many shifts are you running? 1. Go hire a second shift. Can't afford new people. Right? So there was this economic challenge of access to capital just to grow. So we had to solve that for our clients, regardless if it had anything to do with what our day job was. We knew solving other business problems in Charlotte for Charlotte small businesses was just a worthwhile cause. And our night job became, to Adam's point, what don't we know? What's out there? So the one commonality on all of this is there are no billboards on your local highway telling you about them. And in fact, call all your CEO or CPA friends, they are just not, they are unknown. And some of that is by design. If you think about PPP and ERTC, it was so publicized, and now we're in this situation of we spent a lot. And I do want to address the one point of free money. It's free in the sense that it's your taxpayer dollars, your kids' taxpayer dollars, your grandchildren's or generations afterwards, right? We're using that money to help companies be successful, which ultimately creates jobs or saves jobs. So if you look at all these grants and what they have in common, it's all about jobs.
Yeah, that's perfect. So let's talk about some of the most frequent questions that you get, and give us some war stories or some successes that have happened recently, because we've got a nice group of people on here, and I'm looking at who all's on there, and we've got a variety of industries and levels kind of represented here. but there's an interest, where do I go? Where do I begin? So let's start with some of the common ones that you hear, and then let's just kind of walk through it.
Yeah, you bet. So here's the questions we hear all the time. Why haven't I heard of these? How and where do I apply for them? Who's my resource? I may need some help. Who has experience with these programs? I don't want to be the guinea pig. How are they being used? So if there's money out there, how have other companies used the money, the funding to help? And then the common one is, are you sure the government's really here to help, right? So I get that all the time. And look, I was as skeptical as every one of you on this call 6 years ago when we began this. All of those are common. If you have them too, every one of your peers have had them, and it goes a lot behind. These programs are very strategic, very purposeful. It's not like some of the COVID funding that was very generic to just save companies, right? These programs all started individually. They're all disparate. They don't talk to each other. They are individual programs started to solve a very specific economic problem. They are Obama era, pre-COVID. So they've been around for that long, right? So I want to group them into 3 categories. And in each of these categories, there's many grants within that category, okay? The first category is around your people, workforce. Your locality wants to save your people. They want to, and save them meaning keeping them in their job in that county. They want to increase their skill set so they stay with that employer. They want you to create more jobs within that county, because ultimately what is that doing? It's creating a tax base and it's sustaining a tax base, right? Which will hopefully pay for these programs in the future. So one category of grants is all around your people. It's about your workforce. The second category, it's around the revenue health of your company. Specifically, are you experiencing any foreign competition or a threat of foreign competition? If you are, there's a lot of money in that one to help. Do you need to bring new products to market to be more competitive? I'll talk about some examples here in a second, but that is very common because the investment to do that is tremendous. Yet we know if we have more competitive products, we will save jobs and probably grow and hire people. Do you, like my father, do you need to grow internationally? Will that help your company? Canada and Mexico apply. The third and final category is really all about capital expansion, expanding production, any headquarters relocation that needs to occur. Do you need to create a new satellite office? If you think about those situations, all 3 of those create jobs too. And so every example I just gave, there's, believe it or not, a specific grant for that purpose. It's not like one grant covers all of that. It's literally a specific grant, and each grant is delivered by a different person in a different geography with a different application process. So that's been our fun, right? Is not only understanding what these are, but helping companies through the process. And believe it or not, these grant administrators, I would highly encourage you to consider them your customers. And what I mean by that is these are government employees that probably don't have your background. They don't come from your world. I've never met one that's really been in business, quite frankly, and sure haven't owned a company. So empathizing with who they are in their role, yet they're responsible for delivering a tremendous amount of economic benefit, but don't necessarily have the experience that you do. Having a solid relationship with your grant administrator on any of these programs only helps you in 2 ways. Get a grant and learn about more that may be available that we don't know about, right? There are many out there in addition to what we know.
So Dan, how do you find this grant administrator? I mean,
Depends
I said
on-
grant, Dan.
Yeah, it depends on the grant, Gary. So let's talk about workforce. That's delivered in your zip code by your Department of Commerce. On their website, there will be an area for grants. And you will see common grants across states because those are federal. But you will also see other grants on their website that are very specific to that locality. And working with Mecklenburg County, the grant administrator there, one of my clients received a preview email saying we have a minority-owned small business grant coming out, $80,000. Wanted you to know about this pretty quickly. Wasn't even on the website yet. But if she didn't have a strong relationship with that grant administrator, she wouldn't have been first in line for that grant, right?
And give us that website where somebody can go.
It depends on your county. So
okay.
so every county has a Department of Commerce, and on that site there will be some of these workforce grants. That's most common.
Okay, Jack,
Mhm.
you raised your hand.
Did. All right. So I feel like I'm rewinding the tape for those of you younger, hitting the 10-second backwards button a couple times, more than a couple times. But when we're talking about PPP and PPP loan forgiveness, there was a common theme as to what was required or what should people be doing in preparation of having to apply for the loans, apply for forgiveness. And there were very common themes, which is, prepare your financials, prepare your history, those kind of things. So are there some fundamental things that that can be prepared by a company in anticipation of seeking this money that are common denominators amongst the applications going out?
Yeah, great question. So in our experience, the main qualification up front is you can't be your first year in business. And most of the time you have to have at least 3 W-2 employees. So that's the baseline, right? Much different than PPP and ERTC. At that point, you enter their application process where you have to show that you have something that taxpayer dollars should be invested in, whether it's a training program or a hiring need or a capital improvement. You have something that you want to pursue. And at that point, you're asking the government for funding to get that accomplished. So let's use the example of training. Once you get approval on the government funding your training program, you conduct the training, you have a little registrar, and submit that as to the number of employees that were trained, and then they deliver the funds. The funds are set aside for you. So the requirement is you have to do what you said you were going to do and show some type of evidence that it was done. On the revenue side, we highly suggest, if you have financial reports or even a CRM tool, that there's a button that can be clicked to show the economic results of whatever the grant was meant for to grow revenue.
Are there strings attached to, like, okay, so you provide training, you train, you have different cohorts of training over the course of a year. Are there requirements that the cohorts stay with the company? So that would be more a relationship, like in an employment agreement, that, hey, we're going to provide this training to you, vocational training perhaps. You are then committed to us for a year, or else you have to pay back the money. Are there strings attached like that?
I think, Jack, because these are delivered locally and not as broad as some of the programs that you all are deeply involved in, right? It is more on a trusting relationship between you and your grant administrator. The premise is if you train people, they will want to stay with you more, right? So, okay, I trained 10 people in 9 states. It was still successful. But no, in our experience, we haven't seen any strings after the fact because the funding is delivered once the training is completed, right? So after that point, there's no involvement. Now, next year, because again, these programs, you get them every year. It's not a one and done. So next year, when you apply for training, we also highly suggest the business owner talks about how great it was last year and the jobs that were saved, get some employee testimonials, help your grant administrator do their job. They have to be successful too in delivering these funds. So if you receive great results from these, let them know.
So Todd has got a good question. Todd, good to see you. He always has good, thoughtful questions. And so what about businesses that are virtual? They don't have any physical offices and are not necessarily grounded in any specific county.
Sure. My suggestion there is to leverage the zip codes where your employees are. We had a Mecklenburg County business that applied for South Carolina grants because a lot of their workforce was over the state line. So look, the programs are adapting well to the remote workforce. They have to, right? I mean, they just have to. So we've seen great results with that situation. And honestly, I think your chances are higher when you're working with multiple counties trying to understand the total amount of funds available to you.
Well, I can testify, my son in their second year of business, he had two partners in Kearney, Nebraska, and he was in Denver, Colorado. And they got a federal, or they actually got a Nebraska grant that not only saved that company, but like they have been on rocket fuel since then. But two of the three were in Kearney, Nebraska, and they found this grant, and it paid for Zach to design and source and do everything so that they got their shoes out and improved and whatever. But it was a big deal. So now, if everybody is in various parts of the country and nobody is in a localized, let's say that you're the only one in a completely virtual company, and that's kind of where their company is right now. They have people in New York, they have people in, various parts of the country. What do you do then?
So the workforce grants are one of the three, right? So think about then revenue grants that are absolutely not geographically dispersed. They apply to a company that is under stress from certain situations, such as foreign competition, lacking product health, not competing internationally well. They have nothing to do with where you are at. And in fact, those are delivered by the university system in America. I have no idea how that happened, but Georgia Tech delivers the Southeast portion of that grant. SUNY Albany delivers the Northeast. It's incredible that the government decided to deliver the funds through the education system, but that's what it is, right? So no, they don't have geographic requirements on where your people are.
That's cool. That was a good question. Anybody else out there? We have a nice little crowd out there today. So no question is a dumb question, and you can remain anonymous if you really feel like it's a dumb question. I'll honor that.
I'll ask a dumb question and own it as well. So how about this? I think all of our businesses are struggling with the work from home and whether it is appropriate and how to deal with. Okay. So from my perspective, personal, professional perspective, is I understand that there are efficiencies. Like I'm working from home today. I have a pretty bad cold. But okay, getting up and I was, at work at 5:30 this morning instead of getting in my car and driving. And I probably will work later than I would otherwise. So this afternoon. But there's also the loss of, I think, camaraderie, the ability for me to go into someone else's office or vice versa, have some of our younger people come into my office to ask me a question. So we see both sides of it. Are there any pockets of money that you've seen that are on one side of that argument or the other, which is, funding the ability to be able to work more remote from home, or on the other side of things, which is let's provide, money to upgrade your facilities or, be more attractive to get people back into the office kind of thing.
Yeah, the capital improvement grants would definitely address the latter. I would argue on the former, Jack, that skill sets of employees now have to be scrutinized even higher than ever, right? Because they can't walk into your office and learn how to do their job just a little bit better with that interaction. It's even more critical that we address skill set needs. So for that purpose, I believe in a grant application, telling that story with the outcome of increasing training and for skill set development would be highly beneficial for the government to fund. Because what's the alternative? Somebody else trains them really well and they lose the tax base, right? So no, I like the narrative on that one. And those are the types of narratives that in an application really help your cause. Because again, these grant administrators are not from our world and don't understand the business challenges that we're under.
Got another
Great
one.
question.
All right, they're
got
just
another
coming
one?
to me. Maybe because I'm sick and I just like it's just my
You must
brain
be
is just
feeling better.
floating all over the place. Who knows? Okay, what about vocations? So is it more geared toward, do you see more money for traditional vocational type blue collar, or do you see money allocated for professional services? So is there a differentiation between that, and do you see one more funded than the other?
All the above. I've witnessed companies receive training for EOS, CRM training. No sales rep typically knows how to use that tool well. But another experience, somewhat related to the one Gary gave, we had a furniture company in High Point as a client during COVID. We only sold to hospitals and restaurants. So what were the two industries first to shut down, right? And all of our furniture supply chain came from Italy. Again, first country to shut down. So I told them, unless you owned an oil field, because at that time oil went crazy with Russia, right? I couldn't fathom a worse situation for a business owner. So overnight, they were in their warehouse spraying every piece of furniture we had with bleach. And we had to transform the business into a healthcare furniture company because we knew hospitals were open or any healthcare facilities. And we knew the markets wanted assurances on cleanliness, right? So by transforming the commercial strategy of the business, then we had a manufacturing problem. How were we going to do this? A grant stepped in. We had to retool, buy new property, plant, and equipment. The government stepped in and trained our entire vocational workforce on this new equipment so that we could manufacture new products in different ways. And within 2 weeks, we had a website and we had the ability to ship healthcare furniture to hospitals. And we didn't start that process day one trying to meet our grant administrator, right? You have to have, we had a great relationship with that person in advance so that they could be alongside of us in this tremendous challenge. We absolutely would have went bankrupt. And the company's been around for 85 years. So with that relationship with them, they were helping us be creative in solving that challenge in the plan.
That's a great example. What's one of the most unusual examples that you've been able to help somebody with lately?
We have a current client that creates curriculum for school systems. So it's a services company, right? It's not a manufacturer. We don't take raw materials and create finished goods. It's a true services company. I hired a sales rep whose son lives in Canada. And he asked the question, well, great, Mom, can you sell your stuff into, our county and our district? We have we're a North Carolina company. Most of our clients are here. No way, right? Like we don't know how to start that journey. So similar to my father's example, the state of North Carolina actually has 3 separate grants to address this problem. They are helping us with rewrite our curriculum to make sure it's in French for Quebec. They are creating a Canadian website. All of our brochures and sales collateral are in that language, in the languages up there. We are invited to multiple trade shows up there to meet school district leaders. And what's fascinating about these trade shows is we are alongside of the government at that trade show. It brings tremendous, I think, influence in working with customers. We're not an unknown. We are there sponsored by the US federal government. So in that respect, people absolutely want to speak with us. And they've committed to producing a certain number of leads. And their question is, do you want us to qualify the leads for you? Again, this is the government. It feels like that's what my sales team should be doing, right? But this is the government doing this for us. And in this grant, the United States has in-country offices to help, and they have relationships with in-country customers, vendors, supply chain. And I think the relationship part of that is more valuable than any amount of money that they can give you.
Great
So
question.
we may be teaching Canadian students part of our US curriculum, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Yeah, it depends on what we're teaching.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to put a big caveat on that one. Some of the stuff that we're teaching down here probably don't want to have up there either. Question, what kind of commission would an agency such as yours expect to receive after finding grants for companies? Great question.
Great question. And emphatically 0, nothing. I'm not a grant employee. We do not monetize this in any way. I do not work for the federal government, the state government. I run a consulting company that helps others solve sales problems. This just turned into, again, a way to solve a business problem we were seeing often around companies not having the capital to grow. Great question.
That's what I was trying to say on the front end, and I wasn't clear enough, evidently, because it sounds too good to be true. And I was getting flamed a little bit on social media for, well, yeah, but how much are you getting paid to help these people get free money? The same amount that we've charged for the last 176 weeks. 0.
Right.
But, people, and listen, we're all capitalists. We all have to make money to keep people employed. But we also believe, every one of us, all 4 of us on this screen, believe that we need to give and serve, and the stuff will come back. Freely give. Sometimes it freely comes back, and sometimes it doesn't. As long as you're not keeping score, you're going to be fine. If you're keeping score, you're going to be really miserable, because you're probably going to give a lot more than you get back at times. And giving back comes from places that you don't expect a lot of times. So anyway, that's what I'm going to say about that. Here's another question. Is your company funded by grants? Oh.
The answer, quite frankly, is no. The grant money goes to our clients. So it's always a fascinating conversation to have with a business owner on how do we use the money. And it's, I love sales. I really do. But we tend to be towards the bottom of the list by the end of that discussion. It's incredible the amount of pain and business challenges that they have. In so many, instances. So creatively hearing those challenges and trying to apply the different programs, that's a lot of fun. So you have to know they're out there. You have to know how they're being used. And really importantly, there has to be a track record, right? Like I don't mind being creative, but I like recommending something where I know I just watched somebody else do it that way and saw great success.
Yeah, that's good. Hopefully people understand why we like working with Dan. It just, I mean, it's so cool when you can help a business grow their sales, or, you know, because that's what he does. And he has a big team. It's not just Dan Flaherty. And he's got an amazing track record, man. I mean, tell him a little bit about your background, because you're a pretty humble guy, but just give people an idea of what you've done, just a little bit.
I spent my whole career in corporate America, and started at GE, a decade there, really in its heyday. I loved that company because they almost had this rule of, we will not recruit from Ivy League schools. The people we want work hard, play hard, and earn it, and just fly past those that are privileged. that was our motto, right? So that, for me, that had a massive impact in the rest of my career. Then spent about a decade at Johnson Controls, a very large heating and air conditioning company. And then finally led sales for Acuity Brands. They're the largest lighting company globally, about $3 billion. I've had a lot of roles. General manager. I was actually an auditor, a financial auditor, which is unusual for a salesperson. But the majority of my career, I loved leading sales teams. I believe they're misunderstood. I love hearing CEOs say, I don't know what my sales team does. I think they golf a lot. I think they have expensive dinners, but I'm kind of afraid to touch them. Right? They think they're Monet or Van Gogh. They just don't want to touch them. And I can assure you that's not the case. Great salespeople are very scientific in what they do, and they want to improve. So I just liked hanging out with a department that is often misunderstood, and honestly has a lot more free will in how they go about being successful. You know, if you're in finance, and I was, the law dictates, you know, what we do, and that's not the case in sales. So just seeing the creativity and what successful salespeople have done is great. All that being said, 6 years ago now, you know, I was overseas a lot. And when you start to have teenagers and you're missing ball games and recitals on the weekends, that does not go well. So I retired. And I had no idea this world of fractional existed. I met great people like Gary. And honestly, I pushed back. When I was in corporate America, I don't think I would have believed in this. But here's my fault. And Gary was very clear with me. Dan, you don't understand small business. That's why you think that this isn't doable, is because you don't understand the challenges that small businesses have right now. And he was totally right, right? Like I had my business card. I had a few $1 billion behind me. I could do the job. And the world I live in now, oh my word. So that's, you know, that was humbling, but it allowed me to figure out what in the world is there to help, you know, beyond our services. And that's really where we fell in love with these grants.
Yeah, that's great. You are a gem, and I appreciate your humility in being able to say that, because you had tremendous success among, you know, some very storied brands and companies, and you have tremendous success, and you've navigated that transfer, because it's a shift, and it can you know, kind of give you more than whiplash at times, but you've done that extremely well. And again, we're here to serve you guys, people that are running privately held businesses, because you are the engine, not Bank of America, not Duke Energy, not to try to steal anything away from them. We need electricity, and we need to be able to access our money through ATMs. Appreciate that. However, the fabric of America is small businesses, you know, period. And that's our passion. That's our purpose. Try to make a difference with you guys. So any other questions from the gallery? Adam, anything that you have heard from any of our clients where they're scratching their head, or just wondering, or, is it worth doing the labyrinth?
I think that, I think for our clients, kind of the wandering through the desert factor really comes down to, kind of some of the same points that Dan talked about, which is, you hear these big announcements of new people locating and getting all these incentives, and they kind of get pissed off. That's like, seriously, it's like, and they don't want to be jerks, and go in and threaten to move, so then they get something. But at the same time, they're like, wow, I mean, you're throwing out these incentives to bring a new person in and not looking at the people that are already here, So I think, kind of just hearing about the hope that, well, there is stuff, and it also never hurts to ask, it is helpful, I think. But that's really where we get the biggest, our two biggest conundrums are, A, I don't even know where to start. I just heard there's free money out there. And then B, well, that's a bunch of BS. I mean, this guy's bringing 30 people here and an average pay of less than what I pay. I've got more employees at a higher rate, and they're giving that guy that much money. Like, why can't, where do I sign up? For that.
I will say also, just kind of going back to the, a couple questions about how much you get paid and that kind of thing, is that our society has gotten skeptical on these kind of things, and there's still people that are out there that are very trusting. And I've said this more than several times over the past several years that we've been doing this, is that beware, make sure your kids and your parents are aware of the various scams and the way that people get scammed. And so I believe I feel like it's understandable that people would be somewhat skeptical, okay, as to, is it too good to be true? Because many times it is that way. And so, hopefully people will continue to appropriately vet or trust people that are trusted, meaning pathways to reach people like you. And so, but I was thinking about that this morning, because there was apparently they were talking about companies that help others find jobs. And so, paying a fee up front and then not actually getting anything. And so things like that. So it's a long-winded way of saying that I understand people's skepticism, but I also want to make sure that people remain cautious about just everything that goes on without being paranoid, essentially.
Great point, Jack.
A couple questions have come in. Do you have any advice for an individual entrepreneur in the first year?
No. We all know the statistics, right? 95% fail to make it to $1 million. 99.6% fail to make it to $5 million. These grant programs absolutely don't apply in that situation. So from that respect, no on the grant side. My only advice would be to have an amazingly powerful network to help you be successful. If you go at it alone, I think those numbers are very real. If you don't, I think your chances are greatly improved.
Are there ways to increase the possibility of a new business to getting some of this stuff? So for example, I don't think a guarantor is the right word, but in this scenario, but something that says, okay, yeah, we're a new company, but we have the backing of this other company that could serve as a guarantor, that if we screw things up, then you can come after them.
No, that's great, Jack. We failed every time we tried to do something like that. So in one situation, we had a startup and all the owners had equity. So we sat with the local county and said, well, it's not a W-2, but obviously that's tremendous tax base for you afterwards. And I would look at them a little bit like the DMV, where in the application process, there's no creativity in making sure there's W-2 workforce and it's a business that's been there for a year. anytime we've tried other ways, they just don't comprehend it. I believe, like you and I do, and the rest of the folks probably on this call. And it's only because they most of them don't have any business background at all.
All right, great. Next question. I have seen grant aggregators out there, but specifically Hello Alice. Are there others?
We're not familiar with them. Our success has been, again, forming the relationships with the local teams that make the decisions and not outsourcing this, to a third party. And quite frankly, I want to make sure my organization doesn't end up going there. It's just not our core competency, right? So that's not our role, other than just seeing a lot of success and creativity on what's out there.
I don't know anything about Hello Alice, but the thing that worries me about some of those things, like I keep getting spammed all the time on ERC money. Hey, you qualify, you could qualify for $893,000. Like, seriously, do you realize the industry that we're in? No. But there's so many bad ones out there. And that worries me a little bit because, yeah, those guys, they are going to take a percentage, and I don't even know how they do that legally, from the, they probably get an upfront fee or whatever to get around it, because that grant money has to go specifically for that defined purpose. Can't skim off of it and then, pay your friends and whomever, your Sherpa. So I'm sure that they're getting paid for that, but I just, Dan, you figured it out. You had to figure it out. And your father obviously provided some inspiration, and you did, and it was a difference maker for you and for all of the companies that you've been able to serve. I mean, dang, hey, I can go help you grow top line sales, and by the way, the government pays for it. Sign me up. So.
Well, yeah, and in a West Virginia example, we found $1.7 million. I can assure everyone on the phone, our fee is nowhere near there to help run the sales team, right? But that was the challenge at hand. So, from a reputation standpoint, we absolutely have a brand that wants to be known as forwardly helping others. 100%. That's in our value statement. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's good. That's why you're on here. Any other questions as we're kind of ramping up towards the top of the hour? This has been a pretty good discussion. Going once. So, Jack, at the beginning of this thing, we did talk about you had a bad dad joke.
It's actually a math problem. And I think it's been going around on the internet. So if you know the answer and the reason why this works, then you're not allowed to say it. Well, you guys are not. Anybody who is on the line can. All right, so you got to get your calculator out. All right, so on your computer, on your phone, you need to take your shoe size and round up if you're a half size. Then you need to add 2 zeros to that number. So like I'm a size 8, so it'd be 800. And then you're going to subtract the year that you were born in. And then you're going to add the year that we are on currently, which would be 2023. And when you hit equal, that will be the age that you are now or will be if you have a birthday that has not occurred yet this year. Now, the first person in the next 10 seconds, without looking it up, I will give away a Starbucks card to telling me why that works.
All right, so shoe size, round up, add
2 zeros, add 2 zeros.
2 zeros.
So for me, it'd be 800. Subtract the year that you were born in, and then add the year that we are on now, which is 2023. And then the last 2 digits in that number will be your current age, or the age you will be if you haven't had your birthday this year yet.
shoe size plus 2 zeros minus your birth year, add the current year. Is that right?
2023. Yep. And when you hit equals, the last 2 digits will be your current age.
Ooh,
Did it
that's
work?
pretty good. That's better than the dad joke. I like that one. Makes you think. Like, how does that work?
And I tell you what, I will reveal why that works next week. So
Oh, I like it. All right, that sounds good. So nobody gets the Starbucks card today?
I didn't see
Nobody?
anybody respond as to why that works, but my son, he did it once and then he did it again. And he looked at me, he's like, well, Dad, this is why this works. And I'm like, okay, that's why you're going to be an engineer, because you understand that. And that was having gone to Auburn to visit over the past Sunday, Monday. And speaking of which, we're talking about restrictions and US citizens and Canadians and that kind of thing. There was this room that said only US citizens could go into this room. And so I don't know if it's like top secret Auburn military stuff going on in there, but it was very clear that if you were not a US citizen, you could not go into that, go through that door. So.
Interesting. Wonder if it was SAIC.
Yeah. All right. So whoever answered anonymous, well, see, if you answer anonymously, then I can't give you a card.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you want to reach out to me and be honest, I will send you a card because your answer is correct.
Oh.
It's like it's a magic trick, right? But I mean, it's
It
kind of
is.
like that's how magicians work. They distract and put in noise and get you to where you think you are going to end up at.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it. I figured it out. Yeah. Oh, so we have a winner.
I need to write that down.
Good job, Dixie. Do you have her email?
I don't think so. If you'll send it to me.
Dixie, send it to us in the chat before we hang up, if you would. Well,
since you said it, I guess I can reveal it, right? Should I go ahead and reveal it? So if people aren't in suspense. All right. So the shoe size is irrelevant once you add the 2 zeros, because really what you're doing is because you're only using the last 2 digits in the quotient that you're getting. So when you hit the equals button, it makes it irrelevant. So really all you're doing is subtracting your birth year from the current year to get your current age. But 30 seconds, my engineering son took to figure that out. And he kind of looked at me. He gave me that look as if I told him a dumb dad joke. So that's why I said it was a dumb dad joke. All right. So she has sent her email address. Have a wonderful, very small something from Starbucks. Maybe about this much for $5 or whatever it is. So you probably given even more than $5 one. So you could probably get, a couple of them. I think we're up to 10 now. Maybe they come in $10 increments. Yeah, I think 10 was always the minimum.
Might be able to get a big one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for doing that. Jack, you get past that cold or whatever it is that you got. Dan, thank you. You get the award for the coolest background, and it's not just background, it's his study, his office at home, it looks like. So, right? Very cool. Yeah, I didn't see him sneaking in any bourbon sips though, so he's probably gonna wait till he gets off screen for that to happen.
That's right, and the cigar for sure.
All right, guys, have a wonderful week. We'll see you next time. Same bat channel, week 177. See you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dan.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Appreciate it. Bye.